animal sacrifice, which is called dam. He's going to make animal sacrifice. And that is to show you that it's very important when Allah says, do this. We simply obey him. Why do you have to cross? Except maybe there are other strong reasons. But it is mandatory for pilgrims not to cross the Mecca boundary without assuming taste of Iran. Any pilgrim who does that then will be liable to make animal sacrifices.
The Islamic scholar urges intending pilgrims to seek knowledge about Hajj and other Islamic matters in order to attain Hajj Mabrur.
Now it's time to know the winner of last week's quiz and the question for this week. Good luck.
Welcome to the quiz segment. The question in the last episode was, list the 4 pillars of Hajj. The correct answer is Ihram, Tawafful Ifada, Sa'i and Arafah. The winner is Babagana Ahmed from Borno State. He provided the answer ahead of others. Babagana Ahmed will be contacted on how Nakon will reach him with the prize he won. A quiz winner will get 25,000 Naira cash prize. This is part of Nakon's effort in social investment in Nigeria. Now to the quiz for this week, and the question is, what major Hajj rite are pilgrims expected to perform at Miqat? Again, what major Hajj rite are pilgrims expected to perform at Miqat? Text your answer to the number showing on your screen. The winner will be the first person whose correct answer is received. All answers should carry the name and location of sender. Good luck and happy viewing.
Once again, good luck to you. Up next are your messages.
Abubakar Musa from Gombe State sent in the first message. It contains this prayer for Nakon. Assalamu alaikum. May Allah assist Nakon to continue carrying out its duties successfully. The second message came from GSM number 0703-279-5202. It reads, we appreciate Nakon's effort in uplifting Hajj management. We also thank stakeholders for their collective contributions to the success of Hajj in Nigeria. May Allah continue to guide you all.
This is where we draw the curtain on today's program. See you same time, same day next week with another edition of the program. But before we go, remember that you can send your messages, comments, observations, and questions through our mobile phone number and other social media platforms. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.
لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا
NTA, you can't beat the reach.
This is the network service of the NTA.
Hello and welcome to National Conversation. I am Cyril Stover. And National Conversation is a special program which affords those who aspire to the leadership of this country an opportunity to unfold their agenda. I'm not here alone. I'm here with my colleague, Kingsley Osadula. Kingsley.
Thank you very much, Cyril, and I join my colleague Cyril to also welcome you to this episode of National Conversation. Our guest on this occasion is the presidential candidate of the African Action Congress, Omoyele Sowore. Mr. Sowore, it's our pleasure to welcome you to this episode.
Thank you for bringing me.
All right.
All right, just a little brief on our guest, Mr. Omoyele Sowore. He's known as a human rights activist, a pro-democracy campaigner.
Well, thank you once again for bringing me. My name is, again, Omoyele Sowore. And telling you about myself, my concern, the entire program. But I just want to briefly say that apart from being a pro-democracy activist and during my time a student activist at the University of Lagos, I'm also the publisher of Sahara Reporters, which was vetted in 2006 in the US. And I ran for the first time as president in 2019, after which I had a stint in detention, precisely five months, for pushing for a better nation, because obviously Nigeria had been in crisis my entire life, and I'm running this time to ensure that that process that took me to prison in 2019, or jail, is completed, which is to completely revolutionize this country. This country deserves leaders who have the capacity, the integrity, the honesty, and the character to take the country in a different direction from which it has been since 1960. And I just feel like I should not be a bystander forever. This is not a sense of entitlement. It's just that it is right time for people like myself, who always fought for better things in this country, to be directly in the saddle of leadership, because I'm qualified by every means. And I brought myself out this time again, just so that we could have a very introspective period of transition from the old generation to a new generation of leaders who actually understand how the world works.
You were president of the University of Lagos Students Association, or Union. And you had a run-in with the military authorities at the time. As president of UNILAG Students Union, did it ever cross your mind that you would be in this position of seeking at some point to ask for votes and lead the country?
No, I was one of those young people in those days who hated politics and were lethargic about partisan politics because of the way the military was running the country. And we didn't believe that the military was willing to hand over power to civilians. So we opted for the pro-democracy side of the struggle. And when I was president of the student union, such that I didn't want to participate in further partisan government, we converted it to the student union government. So it was a government. And because I wasn't just thinking that one day I would run for office as the president of Nigeria. I didn't have a political ambition as huge as that. But I had aspiration that I would want to live in a free and prosperous country, and that the military had no business in government. That was why I fought my entire time in the university. And it earned me 2 expulsions and almost cost me my life while I was in the university.
All right, so here you are today, and you're aspiring to get into leadership. Nigeria is a complex society, as we well know. Yes, you had a stint as Students' Union president, Students' Union government in a university, in the University of Lagos, but now you're looking at the big picture. So, you think you're well equipped to be the president of Nigeria?
Absolutely. I have often argued that whomever said Nigeria is complex hasn't been to complex societies. I lived in the US for 20 years, and just one state in the US, Alaska, is bigger than Nigeria. California is half of Nigeria. Texas is 75% of Nigeria. It's just 3 states. And there are 50 of those states managed, run by one person, the president of the US, who is now Joe Biden. So, but because we are cocooned here in sometimes our thinking, or because we've been conditioned to believe that every problem is complex, then we often refer to Nigeria as a complex place to govern. I understand that there are 250 different languages and several other tribes and cultures to manage, but that is not an excuse for anyone who wants to manage a state or a country within which you can get from one destination to the other in an hour and 15 minutes. I've lived in a country where you fly for 6 hours and don't reach your destination. I've been in Europe. I've been to over 30 countries that should typically be more complex than Nigeria. Very poor countries. I've been to war-torn countries. I've been to peaceful countries. I've been to socialist countries, communist countries. I've been to very capitalist countries. And almost all of them are governed by one person. Almost all of them have very complex scientific equipment. There are countries that I've been to that have nuclear weapons. With a code that could wipe out the world. And they don't call themselves complex. They focus on solutions. Because the moment you throw the complexity of a country at anybody, you are not looking at solutions. Leaders look for solutions. They don't try to define, and make it look as if complexity is something that cannot be overcome. We have overcome different ages, from the Stone Age to a very, very computerized age. Now we are at an age that is defined by artificiality, artificial intelligence. Maybe the next interview we'll have on NTA in the next 10 years or less will be done by a robot. And all the questions will be written on ChatGPT, which is a new, software in the world. So if all these new artificial inventions are looking at how to solve complex problems, those who made it, humans, should not glamorize or glorify complexity in Nigeria. Why? Because there's nothing complex about constructing a road from Lagos to Maiduguri. It's just about maybe 600 miles. It might be more, I'm just saying. It shouldn't be complex to complete a hospital. It should not take 30 years to finish Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, which is only 120 kilometers in length. It should be complex to finish a 4-year course in a university. It is no longer complex to transmit. It used to be complex to transmit news or broadcast news. So the word complexity doesn't come into my own dictionary as far as Nigeria is concerned. It's a country that can be managed with very little energy. That's why anytime we see leaders who have little innovation or energy, we say, we call them action governor. We'll build a hospital that has a scanner in the middle of the lobby, and we call it state-of-the-art hospital. There's nowhere in the world where a hospital is referred to as a state-of-the-art hospital. It is the capacity of the hospital to handle treatments of different complexities that makes the hospital tick. But, like I said, it's part of our mind conditioning, and our leaders love it when you say Nigeria is complex.
Interesting that you referred to the United States and a number of other countries that you have visited. Often, for persons who are aspiring to lead some countries, questions arise as to their pedigree. In other words, what qualifies this individual to say, I want to lead you? If that question is asked of you in this circumstance, what will be your response?
My response will be very clear, and it will be verifiable. That I've been part of every event in this country from which there was a transition of governance to another. And I'll quickly go through them. When I was a student leader, I was part of those people who fought, and that is leadership. I was a leader who took bold steps to say military rule must end. It took us a while, and there were bruises. I was detained at least 8 times before I left Nigeria. I was expelled twice. I was almost killed at the University of Lagos. I was poisoned at the time. And after 10 years, in 1999, that process came to an end. We were victorious. So if I were to be in the Nigerian army and I fought for 10 years, I would have been given different titles. My shoulder would be filled with epaulets because I would have been a victorious soldier. And after that, I left the country. There was another transition that was needed, which was from civilian to civilian transition, which ended in 2007. And there was a problem. The problem was the man who was there didn't want to go. He had a third-term agenda. I was one of the people who fought to send him off. And I made another transition, which was professional. I studied geography and planning at the University of Lagos. I ended up becoming a successful journalist. Those are the track records that people look at. Leaders who are dynamic, who can adapt, who can speak to issues, who can stand up for issues, who understand the gamut of leadership, followership, who understand the issues affecting their people. So I became a publisher. In 2006, I reported, it became a global brand. If I was also probably a white person, I would have been rich and been entering into offices of presidents all over the world. I've been invited to every World Economic Forum, but I opted not to go to the World Economic Forum. I went to the World Social Forum instead in Brazil to learn about social issues, land issues, resources issues. And then when that ended, there was another transition in this country that people didn't take note of. We had a president who was voted into power, I think, 2007. Yeah, he was sick. This country was held to ransom by a cabal behind that late president. And when the country was looking for people to resolve the problem, I came in handy, using Sahara reporters to expose every part of the schemings that was. There was supposed to be a coup. But the publication we did, which is now confirmed by the former chief of army staff at that time, thwarted the coup. So, you know, being experienced has nothing to do with being in power alone. It might just be that you are a great witness of history. It's great experience because that helps you to understand your country better. If I was a professor in the University of Lagos, since I left the university in 1995, and I come out as president, would anybody say I don't have experience? No. So, and then you now look at what do countries, serious countries call experience. It's not occupation of office or power. It is character, capacity, that the person must have developed himself over time, understanding issues and solving problems, whether in the private or public sector. So, for the longest time, I have been of service to my country. I've been a public servant, but as a citizen servant as opposed to a paid public servant. So I'll give you just a closing example. By 1992, when I became the Student Union President of the University of Lagos, Vice President Atiku, who is also a candidate in this election, also ran as a presidential candidate of the SDP, the Social Democratic Party. He lost in the primaries. I won as the president of the Student Union at the University of Lagos. So this is 30 years later. By 2022, it will have been 30 years that both him and myself have been participating in public institutional life of this country, but on a different spectrum. All right? He has only been vice president for 8 years. I've never been because that was not my trajectory. My trajectory was that I'm a member of the liberation movement for the country. So these experiences are the most important experience. Any experience that carries sacrifice is even more important than experiences that carries remuneration. And that's why I'm proud to say here today that I'm better experienced than most of them, because I've sacrificed everything I could, and I have, to become the leader that I've become today.
So on that premise, you would be familiar with the most challenging issues in the country today.
Absolutely.
Starting off with security.
Yeah.
So what would you do to turn the situation around?
I will start with 3 interventions. The most important of which is a holistic understanding that security problems in Nigeria did not come from the blues. It started from how our economic system started wobbling and then crumbled eventually. And it produced some of the reactions that is in tandem with the scientific understanding of insecurity. That when people have nothing to live for, they will die for anything. So the first intervention and solution is human security. That the people feel or have access to resources that keeps them going. They feel part of our society at the level of economic, political and social justice, and that they feel whole, that their own personal integrities are intact. And that we understand that security is not limited to carrying AK-47. And it has other interventions, like, there's the issue of homeland security, there's the issue of social security. And what's social security? I work for 40-something years, and I'm entitled to retire. And the day I retire, my pensions, my gratuities and entitlements are intact. They have not been looted by somebody. And I have to go back to work, or figure out how to be begging for it, or die waiting for this entitlement. That's social security, which has not been institutionalized in the country. And then you go to the physical security aspect of it, which is that the people who are in charge of security must have capacity. They must have training. The recruitment process must be stellar. You cannot join the FBI without the FBI visiting your primary school. So where do you come from? They will check on your records, who you dated, who you've been with, if you belong to any society that is linked, if you're a communist or a socialist or a capitalist. They look at all this background and they will ensure that you don't come from nowhere. Our system here, if you have 700,000 naira today, you can go to the police and join the police, even if you just got out of jail as a kidnapper a week ago, or even if you broke out of jail from Kuje 2 years ago, you can join the police and you'll be issued with a weapon. That makes you a weaponized criminal. If you are hungry, you are dealing with a weapon of hunger. That makes you a potential criminal as well, because if you are hungry, you find where to find food. But it's also to understand that security doesn't end with the problem of terrorism, banditry. There is also the issue of cyber security. And as a matter of fact, the worst security the world will face in the next 10 years is going to be cyber-based. Your water system can be shut down from Russia just at development of a code that attacks your water system controlling. Your flight system can be shut down today by a guy based in China or Pakistan, because everything has gone online. The INEC computers can be shut down and we will not have election if we don't secure the computer in advance for the election that's happening in less than 24 days. So there's also the concept of homeland security. Where in the world do we know who is a Nigerian today? And this also ties again to also cyber security, because our information and data is not even secure. Look at this country today. Everybody collects biodata. The banks will collect BVN, passport will collect, road safety will collect their own, private individuals collect, then the NIMC collects, everybody collects your, airline collects your biodata. But there's no one central place where you can say that this data is safe. That is also part of the security that is confronting us in the future, that will confront us in the future. Because some of the criminals that we are dealing with today, even at the level of Boko Haram, had we had a gamut of security in place, including cyber, physical, we could detect some of them when they are entering the country. The other issue is border security. Do you have a border? So until all this is addressed completely and holistically, we are just deceiving ourselves because a lot of things I see with security, a lot of our leaders don't understand the meaning of security. Their own idea of security is, how can we protect the VIP in the country?
Thank you very much, Mr. Showore. But if we still choose to unpack aspects of physical security, some of the existential challenges that we face today include: one, proliferation of small arms and light weapons. Yeah. Two, the unrelenting agitation for state policing. And three, better resources for whatever form of policing we choose, federal, state, or country. What is your prescription in this regard if you became president?
So with regards to production of arms, is to make sure that you mop up arms that are in circulation, and ensure that whomever is entitled to carry arms have their biodata collected, and ensure that they are not criminals. And we can do that because arms just don't come into the country anyhow. Arms are sophisticated equipment that have to be produced somewhere, even though there are local firearm producers. But the more lethal assault rifles and weapons come from outside the country. That's why I was talking about also border security. And nobody has looked at it and said, in this country, you can kidnap me and take me to Warri, and nobody will check your car. Do you know that if we have like correct policing, most of the kidnapping will not happen? Because they would know while the kidnapper is taking their victim to their hideout, they will find a policeman who is not willing to collect 20 naira without checking your boots. Because most of the policing that we need is even psychological. You and I, when we pass certain neighborhoods, we can tell that certain young people or old people looking somehow are up to something. Policemen have even more psychological power to detect crime than that. But we must also understand that the agitation for state policing comes not from only the criminal intent, sometimes of those agitating for it, but it comes from the inadequacy of the kind of federal policing system we have. And I lived in the U.S., I can't stop saying it. Every town in the U.S. has a police department, that's what they call it. And they have their own vehicles, they have their detention, they have a magistrate, and then the state has a police. And all these people have jurisdictions. But if the state police or the town police misbehave, the FBI is able to come in and take over the place. That's the role of the federal, because the FBI is the federal police in the U.S. I agree with those who are asking for state police. I support establishment of campus police. I expect that we'll have even community police. And they exist already. We just haven't had a framework to legalize or officialize their operation. So my intervention in that area will be training. Let the federal government ensure that everybody who wants to join Amotekun is trained at a central place, or the standard of training conforms with what is real policing, so that the governor is not allowed to just use Amotekun to do what they do now. Some of them are running after Yahoo boys instead of protecting what they are created for. Some of them are helping people to serve at parties, just like our police have become. Some of them are used as private security to deal with people's personal problems. That should not happen. There must be an operational manual, national for policing, and then we allow others to do the policing they want. But before you do this, you have to change the constitution of Nigeria. The constitution of Nigeria doesn't allow anybody, without moving policing from the exclusive list to, the states where they can have it. You can have it. We will only be having problems that can never be resolved. That's why I'm also a proponent of a brand new constitution for Nigeria.
Well, at this point, we'll take a short break. When we return, there'll be more with the presidential candidate of the African Action Congress, Mr. Omoyele Sowore. Stay with us.
The Nigerian electoral system is seemingly simple, yet may be complicated for some.
It's for them to come and tell us what they have.
Running an election is equivalent to what? A job application.
I want them to identify the issues plaguing the common Nigerians.
PDP should focus on PDP and APC should focus on APC.
Let's show you what an election is all about as Nigerians pick the next president, governors and legislators. We interrogate their plans, question the rationale and review the prospects. Join us on the ballot.
Back to Mr. Sowore, we cannot say, for instance, that nothing has happened in terms of ensuring our energy security, more particularly electricity. I don't want to focus on oil and gas or renewables, but let's say electricity. We had a legal framework in 2005 on unbundling of PHCN, the GENCOs, GCN, and DISCOs. There have been concerns about the performance of some of these entities along the power value chain. Power remains a major issue for us, and some say it ordinarily will be the cornerstone of our industrialization. Some have called for the annulment of the privatization exercise that went on with all the challenges that might raise legally. What is your blueprint for fixing the power sector?
First, we nationalize the power generation process. And right now, as I'm aware, transmission is still in the hands of the federal government, largely. So the federal government must control how power is generated. What has happened with privatization is the transfer of public assets for free, largely for free, to individuals who are powerful and connected. And then we keep going back to subsidize the same people. And we haven't been able to make that progress we needed in the power sector. The power sector had some little progress. When I say little, at the time that the federal government made it a priority to generate more electricity. And we have the capacity now to generate about 7,000 megawatts of electricity. But we are transmitting less than 3,000. And that's only if it's rainy season. And the other aspect of the power sector we must look at it is the value chain that's driven also by renewables. And the reason why renewables are important is also because it affords the participation of retailers in it. I'll give an example. In the UK, if you have solar panel on your roof and you have excess power, you can get a meter from the UK government to sell into the national or regional grid, whatever grids is available in your area. My goal in 4 or 8 years is to take this country to nothing less than 75,000 megawatts of electricity, which will connect nothing less than about 5 to 10 million homes, depending on how many homes we have in Nigeria in terms of homesteads, and be able to have 24 hours electricity in the country. There is no way Nigeria is going to industrialize without electricity. This one is not even something you argue about. This is something everybody should know by now, because the reason why our industrial base has been completely eroded is because we don't have electricity. Today, what I'm wearing, what you are wearing, should be made in Kaduna. But I won't be surprised if they came from Mali or China, because the cost of production of print or clothes or cotton in China is cheaper than the cost of production in Kaduna, because simply we don't have the electricity. Some people in this country spend over 50,000 naira on diesel per night. How do you, on a personal level, power your house with 50,000 naira, multiply about 30 or 31 days, and survive if you don't have, a huge pocket, or a deep pocket, as they like to call it. So the same thing happened to industries. If the NTA today relies completely on generators, I don't know how much profit you can make in a year to keep the place open, except there is government intervention and grants for you. So that should not be the case. But where the NTA to be electrified, either by renewables or by the federal government source of electricity, you'll be surprised that you have more employees here. And the foreign investors that we always talk about at conferences, who don't seem to exist, will be all over the place. And the small and medium enterprises, which we have made a life out of singing during poetries at our conferences, will really exist in such a way that they'll be contributing a huge amount of our GDP in the country. That is how countries function. Countries cannot function by way of policies and conferences alone that I have known since I was born, and I'm 51 years old.
Some investors are quite scared when you talk about nationalization. And earlier you were saying that you would nationalize power generation.
Yes.
That's a scare for a number of investors.
No, they shouldn't be scared. I know a number of the investors in the power sector who have bailed out already. I know of a number of these Gencos that have been taken over by AMCON. So what are we talking about? And why do AMCON take over them, these private concerns? It's because they use the federal government as a collateral to borrow money. After they get the money, they go and buy private jets. They don't invest them in generating power, and then they become toxic debt. The federal government still has to take over the debts. So this is what I describe as socialism for the rich. They get grants, waivers, they get all kinds of support. And the people are told to go and work hard so that they can become rich. But the rich are told to sit back so that they can become richer. That is not the way to run a country. So these investors are well known to my ideas. They are Nigerians. Most of the investors that I know who are owners of power plants did not build the power plants on their own. The power plants were sold to them at below average rates. The power plants were built by the federal government. And it's the same federal government that gives them, letter of guarantee to get loans. So there's no reason to hide behind the so-called privatization. They are not investors. They are just people who are enjoying what I call corporate welfare.
Let me dwell a little bit more on energy and this vexed issue. Petroleum and petrol. Subsidy, no subsidy. Remove subsidy, non-remove subsidy. Things like that. What would you do with this sector to end this never-ending story of fuel scarcity and fuel?
So, I like to address problems fundamentally. We don't have refineries that are working. If the 4 refineries are working, they will produce a combined number of liters that will be close to 20 million liters on a daily basis. But I'm sure we could get more. I'm just giving a generic figure. I'm not sure of the exact figures. And this will lead us to the real amount of liters of fuel we consume in Nigeria, because the customs, the Nigerian customs, have come out openly to dispute the figures of 60 million that the NNPC claim we consume. And that argument has not been resolved. So I want to fix the refineries. And this is the reason I will fix the refineries, regardless of what people tell me. We have invested over $2.8 billion in helping a single individual to complete his own refineries. That's the Dangote. We should be able to refine our own. Repair our own refineries too. The other factor is that the workers at the refineries are being fully paid on a daily basis, on a monthly basis. They're getting their allowances, they're getting all their entitlements. But the refineries are not working because we don't want them to work. I will make sure the refineries are working. There is no reason why the federal government of Nigeria can help somebody complete his own refinery and not be able to build even his own refineries. And we have talked about modular refineries that are smaller in size but are easy to couple together and make to work. And some people have said that modular refineries can't refine petrol. No, it just means that you add catalytic converters to them. And when you refine your own fuel, your own crude, you get over 6,000 products just from the distillation of crude. But what we are doing now is that we are sending whatever crude we can outside, and we get only one product back. So I know what you want to ask. Would you take down subsidy? I'm not going to take down what doesn't exist. There's no subsidy. Subsidy is the way the rich and connected in this country pay themselves. That's how they share national cake.
Okay, so if I were to put it the other way now, you talked about fixing the refineries. There are those who tell you that there is a misconception that if you fix your refineries and your refineries are fully functional, then the cost, which is one of the biggest issues, the cost of petrol at the pump price would remain cheap. It's been said that it's the cheapest anywhere. There are claims about that. And so, do you think that what you're buying petrol for now is good, or it is too cheap, or some have suggested as much as 500 naira per liter? Are you thinking along those lines?
You know, countries are not governed on the basis of the cost of products alone. They are governed on a number of economic factors, and one of which is purchasing power. If you want people to buy petrol at the rate of 500 naira per liter, pay them the minimum wage of America, right? America's minimum wage is $15 per hour. Pay me $15 per hour. I'll buy petrol for 1,000 naira. Because after then, at the end of the month, I still have the capacity to purchase other needs. But you can't be paying people 30,000 naira per month, 30,000 naira per month, and forget that they have to buy petrol at 500 naira. Our petrol is not cheap. It is the subsidy we offer the rich that is costing us an arm and a leg. Our petrol is not cheaper than that of Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is doing very well, and their minimum wage is not 30,000, and their petrol is almost cheaper than our own. So our petrol is almost as expensive as America's petrol. And America hasn't been producing petrol until Trump came and they opened up a number of reserves and they started selling. But even now, the current price of crude in international market should make us do better than we are doing. But the NNPC, who is our rep in that market, is not remitting a dime into the federal consolidated account. I don't know why, but I will make sure that that doesn't happen under my watch.
Let's move on to another subject matter. There is crisis in public education in the country, particularly at the tertiary level. Yes. And this is indicated by the incidents and the stay-at-home that students and lecturers experience. A number of proposals have been made as to how to fix the issue. If it is basically one of funding and financing, reintroduce tuition with a minimum or an upper limit beyond which federal institutions, for instance, cannot charge. That's one leg of it. But what was your response to the crisis in public education in Nigeria today?
Well, I beg to disagree with you that it's only at the tertiary level. There are 20 million kids out of school at the primary and secondary levels too. So there's a crisis across the educational sector. And you know why it happened? In the 80s, particularly late 80s, Nigeria signed up to the Structural Adjustment Program. And basically, it says to you, don't fund public education. Don't, charge tuition. But I use myself as an example. I arrived at the University of Lagos in 1989 as a fresh student, with 20 naira, and a huge bag of gari that my father got for me.
Some dried fish.
Dried fish from Ondo State, you're right. So, and the school fees was 45 naira. My father couldn't afford it. The accommodation fee was 90 naira. My father couldn't afford it. So I had to, after dropping my gari, I had to go back into town with letter in my hand to my uncles and family members, relatives that then contributed the money. The truth is that education is not something you subject to the vagaries of market forces. Do you know why? Education is the lifeblood of every country. We might be talking about insecurity, energy. It's educated people that will make this country work. In the last 2 years, since the end of COVID pandemic, or when it moved from pandemic to, endemic or epidemic, whichever one stage it is now, 8,000 doctors have been taken away from this country by Europeans and Americans and Canadians. They are the doctors that we trained for free. They are the doctors they told us not to train in public education. Most of them have 10 years experience, some of them have 20 years of experience. And the irony is that we have to train more doctors because there are only 24,000 doctors left in Nigeria that are practicing. That is the stats that we have now for 200 million people. So how are you going to get the doctors that will start catering for me and you when we get old? How about the kids that are supposed to be born and the doctors that will deliver them? I know that with technology, some of those benefits can come back to us through telemedicine. But a telemedical doctor who is treating you on the phone cannot deliver a baby. You need a midwife who is physically present to take that baby out of the womb. And that is why I won't play with education. I've given you this analogy so that you can understand where I'm arriving at, that education must be funded in a special way. Whatever it will cost is what we will do. And why was it like this? In 1990, and this is something you all know, I'm sure you're older than me, there was a Gulf War windfall. We got $12 billion from it. It was frittered away. How much was ASU asking for during their first strike? Because I was in the university, Jega was their president at that time. They were asking for 1.9 billion naira. And we had $12 billion that was wasted. Why was the argument that, we can't get $1.9 billion? It was naira. It was like, these people, if you give them the money now, they'll develop long throats, they'll become stubborn and all that. Instead of investing in the education at that time, if I was the president of Nigeria when ASU first went on strike and they were asking for 1.9 billion, I would have given 10 billion. turn the universities around. Then at the time we went and got a loan from the World Bank, 120 million naira. They said go and use it to build libraries and laboratories and build more hostels. In my university, at the University of Lagos, what did they build? They were building fences around the hostels. They didn't address any of the issues that the money was meant for. Leadership is key, investment is key, but I think we'll come back to leadership again, who understands what is necessary and priority. Education is priority. There's nothing you can do about it. And it's the federal government and the state government that should finance education. Look, if all the state governments were, instead of security votes that were given to the state governments, which they practically just quaff, if they spend it on education, we make it compulsory. There is no state in Nigeria today that will not have good grade 2 universities. You have private universities, fine, but who can afford to go to private university? It's only the people who are defunding education for the poor that are sending their children to state universities. And you look at the rich who send their children abroad, the cost of sending a child out of this country's shores to go to school in London, America, would train over 50 to maybe even 500 students in our university. So we've had leaders who develop greed, who have disregard for our people, and as a result, we have been put in a conundrum where we think that, funding education is a crime, whereas it should be a blessing to the country. Any leader in any country should be happy that they are investing in education. Cuba did it. There was a time there was Ebola in both Sierra Leone and Liberia. America came around with all the huge gadgets, they all covered up. It was not until Cuban doctors came that they resolved the problem. Even this COVID, the Cubans were the first to vanquish COVID, including Nigerian doctors who discovered whatever drug that they started using treating COVID. That was why the rate of COVID in Nigeria was probably the lowest. Anyway, we never really had the pandemic hit us like the rest of the world. This is why it's important that I don't debate investment in education. Anybody can call me whatever name you want, socialist, communist. I want to invest everything we have as a priority in education. And the moment you invest in education, you will get your security right. You will also get your energy right. You will get your economy right. And I believe, and I'll say this finally before you go to the next question, that the reason our leaders hate to invest in education is because they know if Nigerians are educated, they will not be voting for the kind of leaders we get.
Earlier on, you talked about a new constitution.
Yes.
Well, that brings me to the question of devolution of powers. Yeah. Local governments, for instance. Does it surprise you that even when the local governments have an opportunity to vote and secure autonomy, they didn't? Does it surprise you? And what would you do to... It's been said that power is too concentrated in the center.
Yes.
You want to be president.
I agree. I agree that power is too concentrated in the center, but let's find out why local government leaders didn't vote for autonomy. Because they were themselves not voted into office by their own people. All the local government leaders are appointees of their governors. Where they hold election, the worst electoral body in Nigeria, state electoral election commissions. We participated in our party in, I think in 2020, in local government elections in Ondo State. We're still lining up, our people were still lining up. Ondo State governor, who is a constitutional lawyer, had announced the results of the people who won the election. So if you think INEC is bad, go to what they call State Electoral Commission, SEC, you'll be shocked. So, and that is the problem I have with most of the candidates. There are candidates who never supported local government independence. I'm not a candidate who understands how this should work, but a new constitution will drive that, because we must make the point about the fact that the constitution that we're operating in Nigeria today, 1999 constitution, wasn't a democratic constitution. It was written by the military and imposed on us by Decree 24. We need to change that.
We, at this time, have no evidence to suggest that the Ondo State governor, as you claimed, personally announced the results. We would assume that the instrumentality of the State Independent Electoral Commission was utilized. But which brings us to another very important question. You say we want a new constitution. And under the present arrangement, the process for making a new constitution, for altering a new constitution, is prescribed by the constitution itself in Section 9. the National Assembly and 24 state houses of assembly at a minimum, and the president. How do you intend to bring about a new constitution? That's one. And secondly, we have seen sometimes the tense relationship between the subnational entities and the federal authorities, or a situation where the federal authorities, that's to say the federal government, is working on an idea or a principle, and you don't have, if you like, a complementary follow-up at the subnational level. And that's why some would argue we're having developmental challenges in those entities. How would you respond to all of this if you were
Well, you see, I understand this as there's no radical development in Nigeria today that will not be ambushed, or that people will not fight against. There will always be pushback. But we have also seen that Obasanjo creatively tried to change the constitution. But because he had a personal agenda, it was thwarted. All he was interested in was a third term. My own would be to call a sovereign national conference, because let me tell you, all the things that our people are asking for, especially those who are asking for devolution of power, increasing resources control within the realm of who controls the most, they are all constitutional alterations that cannot be captured by just amending the constitution. And at any rate, for those of you who know law better than I do, you know that Latin maxim that you can't build something or nothing. The Nigerian constitution cannot accommodate an amendment because it was never framed by Nigerians. If I say this everywhere, if you ask an average Nigerian who are the people who made the U.S. Constitution in 1779 or 1789, they know them. They know them because we studied them right from primary school. I mean,
and those persons did not include blacks.
Yes, that's true. And that is why their own amendments were made, but they had legitimacy. The reason was that after the constitution was framed, it went through a referendum of those who were controlling powers at that. If I ask you, do you know anybody who sat and framed or wrote the 1999 constitution? I bet, except they are your friends who must have confessed to you in private. You won't know. And it's not like you are not knowledgeable, you are very knowledgeable. But it's because there was no constitution made, it didn't pass through the processes of creating a constitution, and we need to acknowledge that.
But the argument goes beyond that. It is that, yes, you could say it was handed down by the military, but have you fully explored the provisions of that same constitution?
It's not about provisions, it's about legitimacy. Because the constitutions had contradictions. No, it's not. You must have a legitimate document. The constitution of a country is not something you toy with. It's like a holy grail, right? If somebody comes tomorrow and hands you a different Quran than the one that is in existence, the person will be accused of blasphemy. If someone goes and rewrites the Bible and says, no, we sat somewhere and we feel like the Bible is not modern enough, it did not talk about the computer, would you accept it?
Very interesting. Very interesting. But you are seeking to become president on the basis of the provisions of the existing constitution.
No, I'm seeking to become the president of the people of Nigeria and not the constitution of the military. And that's why I want to change it. Think about apartheid. When apartheid ended, there were blacks who started running for office based on the apartheid constitution. They had an interim constitution. But the interim constitution didn't cover all of the gamut of what was needed for a free state. They had an interim constitution, they were sworn in with it, and then they went and made a constitution that people say is some of the best on the continent of Africa. So when I get to become president, if you can't find the constitution, you can swear me in with Ahmad Dioha. It doesn't matter. It's just to make sure that symbolism is done. And I want to tell you a small joke. When Obasanjo was sworn in as the president of Nigeria in 1999, this was a story told by the Minister of Information. There was no constitution, there was no Nigerian constitution. A copy of the constitution was not available. That is what the Minister of Information said, and is available. You can Google this. So what was this sworn in on or with? Nothing. Because the issue at that time was a necessity. We are transitioning, even if the constitution is not ready. Not even a photocopy of it. It was after the swearing-in was done that they went and printed the Constitution, 1999 Constitution, which is now obsolete. That's what I'm telling you.
All right. We run out of time. We just have a few more minutes to go on this program. But food is key to almost everything. A hungry man is an angry man, they say, and the high cost of food in this country is a major source of concern. What's your answer to that?
One of our programs is food security, and that we must and we are capable of growing our own food and even exporting. But before that could happen, a lot of mindsets have to change, a lot of processes or conditions must change. And one of it is to have our farmland secure, all right? A lot of farmers can't go to work today. But the mindset aspect of it is that an average Nigerian official must allow us to have more tractors than SUVs in their convoys. I've seen governors that have over 50 SUVs, governors, because they walk around with 200 policemen, averagely. This is verifiable information. I didn't make this up. Instead of 50 SUVs, how about we have 48 tractors and 2 SUVs? Because so many of the SUVs are even more expensive than tractors. Because most of the SUVs you see with governors are bulletproof vehicles. Some of them cost as much as $1 million. You can buy over 5 tractors with $1 million. If you are buying in bulk, they will even throw one on top of it for you. And there will be tractors that can last for 4 years. And it's when we start this, agricultural system that is also modernized, until we understand that agriculture has gone beyond just food. We must have it as a way of life. And I'm not talking about green revolution, no. We must understand also that, agricultural revolution, or food security. Until we understand that agriculture is also beyond way of life, it's also tourism. It's also energy. Because if you have a ranch that has over 1 million cows in it, you can use the cow dung to generate electricity, biogas. So, and people will say, well, how about we go and visit the cattle ranch? Because the Obudu cattle ranch that has become a hotel today used to be a cattle ranch. I will also set up a cattle ranch near our wall. I think they call it Akuna. Because they were interested in food security. The Northerners also had what we used to call the granite pyramids. You understand? Displayed. Today we don't need a pyramid displayed outside. What we need is food pyramids inside people's stomach and not stomach infrastructure. So these concepts must be clearly understood but invested in as well. Because we shouldn't be the one, smuggling rice into Nigeria. People should be smuggling rice out of Nigeria. We should be smuggling shogun, cashew. We should be smuggling all the products that can have little value added to them and will make us. There are countries like Ukraine. Ukraine is at war and still exporting grains to Nigeria. In Nigeria, and I think Obieze Kwesili has just been appointed by the Ukrainian president to be on a team that is going to discuss how more of their grains can be servicing the rest of the world. They are fighting Russia. They are fighting what can be likened to close to a world war. And we are not at war, even though we can admit that we're at war in some sense, but we are not at the level of war that we can't feed ourselves and we can't even feed the sub-Saharan African region.
Very briefly, how much of the Nigerian electorate do you understand, following from your experience in 2019? And therefore, in 2023, is the electorate ready, for instance, for a Shawari presidency?
Well, I'm glad you asked this question last. And the reason why you asked this question is after listening to me, you have developed faith in this agenda. I'm not saying that you've joined our party, but I really met the electorate in 2019 because I traveled to 34 states in the country, including in the FCT. And what surprised me the most was that the parts of Nigeria that people were saying, no, they are not ready for democracy or education, they are backward. They were the ones, particularly not, when I said, what do you want? They said they want Makaranta. This is the first thing they asked me. I had to ask my interpreter, what's the meaning of Makaranta? Of course, I knew about it because I served in Adamawa State, and they said it's school, education. I didn't find anybody in the north, or those poor women that I met, at banks of those little rivers or in those huts, who ever said, give me money. No. In fact, the people who were demanding for money were in the south. the so-called civilized South. They're the ones who held us up at palaces of Obas, and that's the reason I don't go to palaces anymore, because the Oba has one vote. So let him exercise it. But I don't want to be held up in your palace simply because I came to pay you homage, when already you are paying homage to others who you shouldn't pay homage to.
All right, I wish we could go on with this, but we must end this conversation here because we've run out of time. We'd just like to take out a few seconds to say thank you very much to Mr. Omoyele Sowore, presidential candidate of the African Action Congress. Thank you for coming on National Conversation. Kingsley?
I also appreciate you for being with us, and best of luck.
Thank you very
elections
much.
ahead.
And best of luck to all of us. May the best win.
Thank you.
And here we end this particular national conversation with Mr. Omoyele Sowore, presidential candidate of the African Action Congress. We'll be back with another presidential candidate next time. I'm Cyril Stover. Bye for now.
Hello, everyone. Proud African Roots presents a fun time for children and teenagers across Nigeria and the globe.
Everything she was trying to open the
I don't need a torch, I just need that.
Hope you learned a thing or two from us.
Showing every Saturday by 9:30 a.m. on